The skyline of Accra was waking up long before I was, the early morning air already humid, the dusty gold of dawn catching the tin roofs off in the distance. I rose from my small student room, shrugged off the last remnants of sleep, and followed my usual routine. A quick shower, toast and strong tea, the phone lighting up with missed messages from friends who were already joking about the new semester. I tucked my notebook under my arm and stepped into the city bustle, heart beating a little faster with the mixture of nerves and anticipation. This year was meant to be different. I declared a new major, resolved to bury the idea of love in favor of ambition. Because romance, I told myself, was for other people. Before you go on, please like, comment and subscribe to my YouTube channel, Story Lab, so you won't miss what happens next. Walking through the gates of the University of Ghana, Legon campus, I felt the hum of student life wrap around me. The avenue stretched toward Commonwealth Hall, lined with the familiar halls of residence, the open squares, the university complex with its wide walkways and shaded trees. The bustle of students chatting, the distant rumble of minibuses beyond the campus wall, all familiar, all grounding. I was here to learn, to grow, to get somewhere. But even as I told myself that, something in me shifted. When I entered the lecture hall for my first class of the semester, I chose a seat near the middle, safe, unremarkable, exactly where I wanted to be. The room smelled faintly of chalk and new textbooks, the hum of ceiling fans overhead punctuating the quiet that preceded the start of class. Students came in, chatting, browsing phones. Then the door opened. She stepped in and the noise faded just a little, but I noticed. Her name was Dr. Mensah, and she was younger than I expected a lecturer to be, yet there she was, confident, warm, dressed simply but elegantly, carrying a stack of notes. She scanned the room, offered a subtle smile, and arranged her materials at the front of the classroom. My chest went weird, my throat dry. I wasn't expecting this. Yet the attraction wasn't something I could dismiss. I told myself, you are here to study, don't fool yourself. But inside, a spark had been lit. Dr. Mensah began the lecture with a kind of calm authority that made you lean in even before she spoke, her voice measured, her words crisp. "Good morning everyone," she said. "I hope you're ready for an interesting semester." And just like that I felt seen. She spoke about the course, its relevance to Ghana's society, how it connected theory to the streets of Accra, the everyday challenges we might face. Then she paused, asked, "Who here has ever encountered this issue personally in Ghana's society?" My hand shot up before I could think it through. I surprised myself. She called on me. I answered haltingly, but she nodded and said, "Good insight, thank you." That little acknowledgement changed everything. I tried to refocus on the lecture, on the slides, on her diagrams, but part of me was elsewhere. On the way the light hit her hair, on the careful way she turned to look at the class, on how the late morning sun crept through the windows making patterns on her notes. When the lecture ended and students filed out, I stayed where I was, letting the moment stretch. She packed away her laptop and papers, walked toward the door. I hesitated, wondering whether to approach her, just a simple thank you, maybe ask a question, but my nerves held me back. Outside, the campus courtyard was alive. Students laughing beneath the shaded trees, birds chirping, the distant rumble of bus engines on the road beyond the campus walls. I watched as Dr. Mensah walked off, her figure receding down the corridor. And I stood there at the threshold, the morning heat now warming the air, the new semester's promise hanging in the breeze, and I wondered, will I follow her, even if only in my mind? Will I let this spark grow, or will I retreat to safety? I didn't move. But I also didn't leave. The next week the campus felt different. I arrived at the lecture room early, the doors still open, the light outside soft and hopeful. I chose the same seat I had before, near the middle but slightly more forward this time, as though I were making a subtle statement to myself. I will show up. The hum of the ceiling fans, the chatter of arriving students, the swish of books and the distant summer noise of Accra beyond the campus walls, all familiar, all grounding. And still I found my thoughts drifting to her. After class ended, I noticed the small sign on the door of her office. Office hours, Tuesday and Thursday 2 to 4 p.m. A real academic ritual, so solid that it calmed part of the craziness inside me. I lingered, barely breathing, waiting until the hall became quiet. Then I mustered my courage and walked down the corridor. Her office was modest. A wooden door, a nameplate, a couple of framed certificates, a potted plant in the corner near the window. She greeted me as I entered, not with surprise, more with a gentle good afternoon, and a welcoming smile. We talked about the lecture content. I asked her a question about the module's theme, how it linked to local issues I'd read about in a newspaper. She leaned back in her chair, her eyes curious and engaged. She explained the background of the subject, her own research interest and how the topic applied to Ghanaian society. I leaned forward enthralled. The more she spoke, the more I admired her intelligence, her passion, the way she made something abstract feel alive. Then, almost casually, she asked, "Actually, I'm starting a small research project this semester. Would you be interested in helping? It's modest now, but it may grow." My heart hammered. I tried to hide it with a calm nod. "Yes, I'd like that," I said, though inwardly I thought, "What am I doing? Is this more than just learning the subject?" As we sat there, our conversation moved slightly beyond the module. She asked about my ambitions, what I hoped to do after this degree. I told her, I wanted to write, to research, maybe change something in my community. She nodded as though she recognized the spark she'd seen in many students. Then she opened up a little. She moved to this university only recently, younger than many of her peers, trying to make her mark, juggling teaching and research, carrying the weight of expectation. For a moment I saw behind the lecturer mask. Possibility, vulnerability, drive. But then I remembered the boundary. The sign on the wall, the code of conduct. I told myself, this is academic. This is professional. Keep it that way. She is my lecturer, I am her student. Nothing else. And that thought sharpened the thrill, made the moment more charged. She smiled and said, "Maybe we can meet later this week, perhaps in the library or for a coffee discussion about the project." My throat caught as I replied, "Yes, that would be great." She gave me the time and place. I stood, thanked her, and walked out of the office into the corridor, feeling both elated and terrified. On the way back to my dorm I passed through the campus grounds. Students lounging under trees, the sun glinting off the windows of the bomb library, minibuses in the distance. I kept replaying the moment, her proposal, her smile, how she looked at me. I asked myself, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? And yet I knew I couldn't go back to how things were. Something had changed. Since the day I agreed to help, things felt charged in a way I hadn't expected. I showed up to the library early, the smell of old books and fresh print mingling with the distant hum of Accra's busy streets. She was there already, poring over her laptop and a thick folder of notes. "Thanks for coming early," Dr. Mensah said, her voice calm. "Makes things easier." I smiled, tried not to let my heart race. And just like that, the project became real. We spent hours together, digging through journals, mapping out research questions, walking across campus after the library closed for the night. The benches under the big trees glowed faintly in the street lights, the air warm, soft. She told me about the fieldwork she hoped to carry out, how she wanted to tie the theory to what she saw on the streets of Accra, how students in local communities were living the issues we were studying. I was struck. Not only was she brilliant, she cared. Not just about teaching but about making a difference. One evening after a long session, we grabbed coffee at a shaded campus cafe. My hands had that slight tremble you get when you know you're standing too close to something you're not supposed to. She laughed at one of my jokes, lightly, genuinely, and I felt my cheeks warm. I realized I was falling for her. She complimented me on an insight I had made, and I nearly choked on the sip of coffee. I told myself to keep it academic. This is lecturer-student. This is professional. But inside, I was twisting in the pleasure and fear of it all. Then came the warning. A friend in my study group pulled me aside one afternoon. "Be careful with this lecturer-student thing," he murmured. His tone was sympathetic, but I felt a jolt of fear. I overheard whispers in the library corridor. Why is he always with her after hours? A glance here, a suspicious look there. I started seeing the boundaries not as invisible lines but as walls I might crash into. I reminded myself of the policies I'd read once. Such relationships are ethically fraught, can undermine the academic integrity of all involved. One afternoon in the office she paused, looked at me with something like vulnerability. "You know," she said quietly, "when I came to this university I felt so young compared to everyone else. I was one of the youngest lecturers, and I worried I'd always be seen as the new one." She let out a small sigh. "And, before coming here I had a relationship that ended badly. It was messy. I've tried to bury it under work." In that moment the lecturer mask slipped. I saw ambition, doubt, pain. I felt closer to her than ever. But I also realized the risk. If you fall for the one person you shouldn't, the fall is bigger, the cost greater. As I walked back to my dorm that night, the world felt somehow heavier. The night air, the campus lamps, the quiet water of the small pond near the library reflecting the orange glow of street lights. I replayed every look, every word, every moment of laughter. I asked myself again, what am I doing? I wasn't just assisting with a project anymore. I was stepping into something deeper. And I knew I couldn't just pretend I wasn't. The conference invitation arrived like a ripple in still water. My heart raced when Dr. Mensah asked me to join her for the Faculty Student Research Symposium in Accra City Center. We spent that afternoon in the packed auditorium, her name on the schedule, me sitting beside her as she prepared her slides. Later, when attendees moved to the networking lounge, I helped her carry her printouts, set up the projector, handed her coffee when she paused. "Thanks," she said softly, eyes catching mine, "just for a moment." That moment changed everything. We left the university behind and headed to a quiet nearby cafe for dinner. When she ordered, when she laughed at one of my jokes, when she held the menu for a bit too long while looking at me, I felt something shift. She talked about her presentation, about how much she'd put into it, how she hoped the department would fund the next phase. I listened enthralled. Later, she said, "I'm glad you're here." I nearly dropped my fork. As we walked back across the campus grounds, the night air cool, the lamplights shimmering on wet pavements after a brief rain shower, I sensed her glance linger. She looked at me not just as her research assistant or student, but something more. I wondered, did she see me? Beyond the papers, the modules, the facade of academics? My stomach fluttered. But the voice in me shouted, "You're a student. She's your lecturer. This is impossible." That voice grew louder the next day. At a small breakfast the morning after, I sat alone when a senior faculty member passed by and stopped. "You two looked very professional at the conference. Good work," he said to her, then looked at me and with a half smile, "Just keep it within the research dynamic, okay?" His tone was polite but firm. I swallowed hard. He didn't say don't date her, but the implication felt heavy. I remembered the policies I'd seen. Relationships between instructors and their students raised serious ethical questions about power imbalance and fairness. I couldn't sleep that night. My mind roamed over our dinner, the soft tone of her voice, the way the streetlights framed her face, the near kiss that never happened. In the corridor, as I walked her to the door of her car, she placed a hand loosely on my arm, looked upward, almost leaned in. "Thank you for tonight," she said quietly. The air thickened. I held my breath. She paused, looked away, then softly, "Good night." I returned to my room and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the ceiling fan, thinking, what am I doing? Am I risking everything for a spark? I felt exhilarated, terrified, foolish, and alive all at once. I woke up one morning and made a decision. I would pull back. After that night, after the dinner, after the look in her eyes, I told myself I needed to focus. On coursework, on study, on my future plans. The campus corridors felt the same, yet everything inside me had shifted. I picked up my bag, marched into class, sat in the same middle row seat, but my mind kept drifting. I repeated to myself, "Stay professional. You're a student. She is your lecturer." And yet my heart wasn't listening. Over the next few days I was quieter in the office hours, less eager in the research sessions. She noticed. One afternoon she asked softly, "You've been a bit distant lately, are you okay?" I gave some excuse. "Just a lot going on," I said. "Trying to keep up with the other modules." She nodded, concern flickering in her eyes, but didn't press. I told myself that was fine. Distance would save us from something messy. But then the tension cut sharper. One late evening I crossed the walkway by the arts building and glimpsed her through the glass. She was laughing, leaning close with a male colleague I knew from the department. Their heads were together, conversation easy, comfortable. My stomach knotted. A surge of jealousy flared. That night I asked myself, is this just a crush or something deeper? If she can laugh like that with someone else, what place do I have? And then the project hit a snag. The funding we counted on was uncertain. Some of our research results didn't match our hopes. She got a call in her office that sounded heavy. She walked into the library later that day, shoulders hunched, eyes worried. I put aside my own doubts and sat beside her. She looked at me, her voice small. "I don't know how we'll manage this without more support." Before I could think, I said, "I'll help. Whatever you need." The shift from your helper to your partner felt both thrilling and terrifying. We stayed late that night, the library nearly empty, the old timber shelves looming, the lights warm and soft. She admitted her fears. "I moved here to build something meaningful. I thought I could handle everything myself. But this is bigger than I expected." I reached out, gave her a reassuring smile, offered to rerun an experiment, to help redesign our questionnaire. She looked at me differently. Her eyes held gratitude, warmth, something that went beyond teacher and student. She whispered, "Thank you." And in that moment I knew, I was in too deep. Walking back across campus after midnight, under the soft lamplight and the rustle of the tropical breeze through the trees, I felt unsteady. I told myself I should turn away, retreat to safety. But I didn't. I didn't know what was next. All I knew was that I couldn't pretend this was only academic anymore. I still remember the evening the presentation ended. The low hum of applause faded, the lights dimmed, and I leaned back in my seat beside Dr. Mensah, throat thick, heartbeat loud. We had just unveiled our research results together. Numbers, graphs, insights, her voice unwavering, mine trembling when I spoke. It was our success, but underneath it I felt something even more important shifting. Afterwards, we walked back across the campus grounds under the gold-tinted lamps. The warm night air held a hush. "You did brilliantly," she said, looking at me with something like pride, and maybe something more. My chest squeezed and I knew this was it. I stopped. "I need to say something," I said softly. She nodded. I took a breath. "I care about you, more than I probably should. I think I've fallen in love with you." Her eyes widened. The moment held both light and shadow. She didn't speak at once. The silence stretched. Then she whispered, This is complicated." She explained. The lecturer-student boundary, the professional expectations, the age difference, the campus rumors that follow when a lecturer and a student are seen beyond office hours. She said she cared for me too, but we must think carefully about what this means. I felt relief and fear, hope and dread. Because the confession was not the end, it was the beginning of consequences. The next day the senior lecturer in the department called a meeting. I walked in late, heart pounding, the smell of coffee, the hum of chatter. He didn't mention names, but his glance at Dr. Mensah and me said enough. Professionalism, boundaries, ethics. In universities all over the world, policies exist to prevent personal relationships when power differences exist. On campus I overheard whispers. "Did you see them together last night? Is it true?" I felt the weight of their observations. I worried for my future. Graduating, moving on, the reputation I built, the opportunity one had. If this goes awry, what will I lose? She withdrew a little. The casual smiles, the late-night coffees ceased. She focused on her work, put more distance between us. I sat in class one morning trying to concentrate, but the lecture hall stretched around me and I felt alone. She stood at the podium, professional, composed. I was just another student in the sea of faces. My heart heavy, I wondered if us had ended before it had begun. Walking out after class I felt the breathlessness of loss. The lights in the corridor felt sharp. The question hovered. If you confess, can you still return to the safety of friendship and normalcy? I wasn't sure. And I didn't know how to proceed. Time passed in ways both subtle and profound. Graduation day arrived with its mix of relief and possibility. The air bright, the campus alight with celebration. I stood among my fellow students, mortarboard in hand, heart heavier than most because I had been carrying more than a degree. I thought of how far I'd come and of how much had changed. Meanwhile, Dr. Mensah received news that shifted us both. A new opportunity, a promotion at another campus, a fresh start for her. That announced change felt like an opening for both of us. I was no longer just a student. I had completed the project, turned in the thesis, and was moving into the next chapter of my life. The power dynamic between us began to shift, quietly but unmistakably. We met one late afternoon, not for office hours, not in the library, but at a small cafe near the new campus. The city of Accra spread beyond the windows, the noise of traffic and chatter wrapping around us like familiar comfort. We sat across from each other and this time we were equals. She looked at me and said, "I'm proud of you." I replied, "I've been proud of you all along." Then we spoke of what had been, what had almost been, and what could still be. I told her honestly, "I love you." She reached across the table and took my hand. Her voice soft but steady, "I love you too." We acknowledged the risks we had taken, the boundaries we had crossed, the fears we had carried. We spoke of transparency, respect, equality, no longer lecturer and student, but partners deciding to give this a chance. As dusk fell, we left the cafe and walked back across campus grounds, the fountain shimmering in the golden hour light, the palm trees swaying in the gentle evening breeze, and the city beyond full of life. Hand in hand, side by side, we stepped into this new beginning together. I looked at her and smiled. The semester of lectures, the late-night research sessions, the confessions and consequences, they had led to this moment. And as the sun dipped behind the skyline of Accra, I felt hope, real hope, for the next chapter of our life and our love.